Hey guys, this is episode 122 of the HooperCast. This is a pre-rec this week. Got some baby stuff going on. So Dustin and I slapped together a little pre-rec for you. Dustin's got a couple things and I got something. So let's go ahead and just get right into it. Episode 122 of the HooperCast. I don't know what we're going to do about Civil War because I am going to see it when it comes out, but it's just a question of when we'll be able to talk about it. So I just don't know what to tell you to expect right now. Anyway, enjoy the episode. Oh, and as for the Letterboxd stuff, I wrote a little poem for you guys tonight. Roses are red, violets are blue. Nobody emailed about Letterboxd, so F you. With the show.
Hello everybody, Dustin here. I am in the middle of traffic on a Monday morning, so I figured I would come to you guys and give you a brief little review of some things that I've seen recently. The first that I want to talk about is Zootopia. Now, Zootopia came out in February, and it has been out for quite some time, but Hooper and I have never gotten around to actually reviewing this one, so I decided I'd go ahead and stick it right here for today. Zootopia is the newest Disney animated film. It stars Jason Bateman, as well as Jennifer Goodwin, and a whole host of other pretty big-name celebrities. The premise is that Jennifer Goodwin plays a character named Judy Hopps. She's a rabbit, and she has dreams of being a police officer. Well, as she grows up and as she moves to Zootopia, which is sort of this utopia where all of these animals live together in perfect harmony, she finds that the harmony isn't exactly all it's cracked up to be. And in fact, there's a lot of people that are prejudiced against her simply because she is prey and they are predators. And so there's basically this idea that runs through the film of racism and intolerance and prejudices, which, you know, is pretty sophisticated for a Disney movie, and it's actually a pretty fun way of approaching a topic like that. So over the course of the film, Judy Hopps meets a fox, played by Jason Bateman, and they stumble on a mystery of sorts, and which is that certain animals, all of which are prey, are resorting back to their natural instinct. So they're losing that thing that, you know, Disney animated characters have, which is that they can talk and think and reason like humans. They're losing that, and they're becoming mindless animals again. So Judy Hopps decides, together with Jason Bateman's character, to investigate and figure out what's going on in Zootopia and why the animals are behaving this way. Now, what unfolds is a little bit of a roadshow picture / mystery. The mystery itself, I think, is mysterious enough for children, and I'm not going to say it's predictable, but I'm going to say that looking backwards at it, it's not as layered or as intellectual as a mystery I feel should be. In fact, you know, the mystery of it is not really the most interesting part of it. So so for that reason, that the mystery angle in the film is lost on me. And so that sort of only leaves the comedy angle, which admittedly it is a funny movie. I'm sure most of you guys have seen, because they marketed the heck out of it, the scenes with these two characters, the rabbit and the fox, going to visit a sloth who works at the DMV, and all of the people at the DMV are sloths. And anyway, it was really funny. But yeah, I mean, just because the movie is funny doesn't make it great. So that's sort of where Zootopia lands. Is it's funny, and it's got a great feel to it, and great animation and great voice acting. But the problem is it lacks that heart that a Disney movie probably is supposed to have. And by the end of the film, I found myself thinking, like, if this was an animated series, along the lines of something like, and I'm going to date myself with this reference, but something along the lines of Marsupilami, then yeah, I mean, that would be super awesome, because it is kind of a television show. It doesn't have the drama, and it doesn't have the weight that a typical Disney animated film should have, or an animated film in 2016, period. So it felt a little bit more like a Saturday morning cartoon than it did, a feature length in the year 2016. So, yeah, I feel like it was a missed opportunity, but at the same time, I love the characters a lot, and if they decided to make a TV show, I would be so down for that. Or if they decided to make a Zootopia 2, I would be down for that, as long as they were a little bit smarter about building the mystery, because as it is, the mystery is sort of built around just showcasing the world that they live in. Like, okay, now we're going to go to the tundra, and now we're going to go to the desert, and now we're going to go here and there, and see all the different animals that live in all these places. So it sort of feels like, you visit a zoo, and, that's how much story there is. It's just, here's another animal in this exhibit, and here's another one. So yeah. Now, that's all the actual film kind of stuff, but then there's this idea, and I talked about it just briefly a minute ago, of racism, which kind of permeates the whole film. I think this would have been a phenomenal way to approach racism in a kids movie, to sort of show the absurdity of racism. But that's not really what they did. Instead, they took it a step further and made it not really an allegory for racism. They made it an allegory for what's going on in America in 2016. This Black Lives Matter, and police brutality kind of a thing. And no matter where you stand on that issue, and I don't think it matters where I stand on the issue, but no matter where you stand on the issue, I think the problem is the conversation is still being had. So right now, there's not a lot that a movie like this can add to the conversation. I think that this is a layered topic that is hard to distill into a kid's movie, which is what they've tried to do here. And in doing so, they make it more black and white than it is in the real world. And they don't have the benefit of hindsight or of knowing the solution to these problems. So I think the issue with it is it gets political, and it feels more political than it should, because the issue is still being debated. It's still being talked about. So because of that, I have to knock the movie down a lot, because it doesn't present a solution or an answer to these problems. So it's not even good persuasion, because if you make a piece of art in the midst of a hot button political topic, at least have the guts to present a solution, or at least have the guts to present to me, sort of something that you hope to persuade me with. But instead, they just kind of focus on the main, basically, they use imagery that we would see today on CNN in the film, and words that we would hear, and they use these things, but they never present any act of persuasion. There's not a it's not a persuasive essay. It does not help me understand the issue, nor does it help me sort through it. So for that reason, the art is flawed, because it's simply just like showing me animals having the same issues that we're having. And then a character who goes, "That's not right." And it's like, yeah, we all know it's not right. The issue is, what do we do about it? And the movie doesn't present anything like that. So for that reason, it feels more like a political statement, because it's more like, hey, here's an issue, and that's it. And politics, especially in an election year, are more like, here are our issues. Don't you agree with those that there are issues? And no one's presenting solutions. That's what politics is. And so this movie then feels political, and it feels like they're trying to, make me aware of issues without ever presenting actual ideas on how to solve it. So anyway, long story short, Zootopia is a great film. And maybe if it had been made, an extra year or two after 2016, it might have been a great film. But as it is, it's tough to say that it's a great film. And Hooper, you can probably cut this part out. I have to pull into a parking garage here, and a ladybug just landed on my arm. Oh my gosh, where'd that ladybug even come from? And even if Zootopia wasn't made a couple years later, at least presenting a solution, or presenting the issue in a new way, rather than just, well, this is what CNN is saying every night, then it's like, I'd give you bonus points for it. But as it is, you don't tell me anything new, or anything that CNN isn't already telling me. And so for that reason, the art is incomplete. So yeah, Zootopia, like I said, it's a charming movie, and even though it's not super deep, and even though it's not super intellectual, I think it's a movie that kids would really enjoy, because just for the characters. But the problem is, as an adult watching, it's not all that it should be. So anyway, that's Zootopia. I do hope you guys check it out, maybe at least on a rental. But yeah, don't rush out to see it. Yeah, I'll toss it back to you, Hoop.
All right, everybody. So it's me. I'm just thought I'd explain real quick. Sorry for my voice. I'm sick or something. I don't know. Anyway, some weeks back I saw Southpaw. And it's starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Forrest Whitaker, Rachel McAdams, and then a few other actors I can't remember the names of. So Jake Gyllenhaal plays a boxer named Billy Hope, and when you find him at the beginning of the film, he is at the top of his game. So the synopsis is about a boxer who essentially hits rock bottom, and then has to redeem himself, which is a pretty generic arc for this genre in particular, and a lot of critics really criticized it for that. But I think the movie is a little bit deeper than the premise. So when we find Billy at the beginning of the film, he is kind of at his highest point. When they stepped into his, he's fighting, and he's a rough and tumble guy from New York. I mean, he seems kind of like a street rat kind of a dude, but just in the way he, with the scruff and
the way he talks and everything. But he wins this fight, this title fight, and he, he's got a beautiful wife played by Rachel McAdams. He's got a loving daughter at home. And so when they go home, I was pretty shocked because their house is freaking huge. It's like a mansion, basically. And I remember thinking, like, even a guy like this coming into money, would he buy a house like this? Or wouldn't he just buy some kind of – no. I mean, it's like a big house with like a gate and a lawn and like a fountain and cobblestone, something, or, nice brick. I mean, it was a mansion. And so right away I was like, I underestimated how rich this guy was. I mean, he has like 20 people who work for him or more, he's got like assistants and kind of like fight guys and trainers and stuff who, he's got to keep on the payroll. And, so he's got it all pretty much. And, so he, eventually something happens to him and, I'll go ahead and talk. It's not a spoiler, but I mean, I believe it's in the trailer. Anyway, so then they're at some charity event because him and his wife were both orphans, and they came up through basically like the Boys and Girls Club, and he attributes them to sort of saving him from being like a criminal. That his life was headed in the wrong direction, and these people provided him with guidance and care, and now he's successful. And so he's at there, and his wife too, and they're at some charity event, and she's wanting him to retire and everything. So some other young up-and-coming boxer is always coaxing him to try and fight. And so he picks a fight with him at the event as he's leaving. His wife tries to calm him down. He can't because he's a hot-headed dude. They get into it, and a couple of what I would call the film's most implausible things happens. The other fighter, I think his name's Miguel Escobar, his cousin. Okay, so he's a Hispanic guy, and he has a cousin named Hector with a gun. Just could have been a little more creative with names or relationships. Why can't it just be his friend? It's got to be my cousin Hector. You know what I mean? Like it's so. This film was written by Kurt Sutter, who of Sons of Anarchy fame, and so God bless Sons of Anarchy. But one of the things that it never really was good at was subtlety when it came to things like that. I feel like my cousin Hector, if it's a Hispanic character, I mean his name's Miguel Escobar, and when Kurt wrote the script, I imagined like, okay, so he's got a guy who's going to shoot. So I don't know. I guess he'll be his cousin Hector, and I'll come back and rename him and change the relationship. He never did. It just feels like a stereotypical placeholder. Anyway, his cousin Hector fires a shot, and it hits Rachel McAdams, and she dies. So Billy is at a low point. I mean, he just lost his wife. Now his daughter and him are kind of not on their own, but she lost her mom, and he lost the person in his life who pretty much did everything. I mean, she handled the money. She just he kind of brought home the bacon, but she did everything. And then he's unable to cope in an appropriate way, and through a series of irresponsible choices and kind of borderline implausible writing, I'd say. I hate in movies where the actions are not motivated or I think realistic for the character, and there's a couple of those here. Thin points in the script where I would say, like, okay, so Billy ends up essentially in a lot of debt because he gets suspended from this 3-year contract, and so he's unable to earn. And so he can't pay his employees or pay for his house. And so they basically have to liquidate everything. So they repossess his house. He has to let go of all of his employees. And he has to move into like a 300 square foot apartment. And his daughter's placed into foster care because of something else, not because of the money. But the reason, the way that he gets suspended is first of all, he tries to go after Hector to kill him, and then he decides not to because Hector has like a family, right? And then he's frustrated during his first of the HBO fights, and he just essentially beats the shit out of the referee, so they suspend him. And I was like, from a grief standpoint, that's believable that he would just beat up the ref, but he's a boxer. He knows, if anything, you'd beat the shit out of your opponent. You wouldn't beat the shit out of the ref. But anyway, so I guess he was losing the fight. Anyway, my note to Kurt Sutter at that point would have been, don't have him do something that's kind of a rookie mistake, such as beat up the ref. I know he lost his wife, but I don't know. I would have just had him get caught while he was on his way to kill Hector or something like that. I would have tied it more to the more believable action. The revenge part is more believable to me for him than, for a former criminal, basically, for a former street rat kind of guy, than for the guy who knows not to do that to a ref. I don't know. Maybe it was the better of the two choices, but I just felt like that plot point itself was a little weak. The reason that he gets suspended. And then he crashes his car into a tree intentionally, and Child Protective Services takes his daughter away. So despite those thin reasons for all these actions happening, the film does a good job emotionally on all of those points. For everything that knocked him down in this movie, you really felt it. If you can get past, which it was easy for me, if you can get past, like, oh, come on, like, of course this would happen, But, like, when his wife dies, it is the saddest thing. We've seen in movies a lot where the guy's pride gets the better of him. And in this case, he couldn't walk away from words, and it ended up getting his wife killed. So the guilt that he carries for that, it's all over Jake Gyllenhaal's face. The whole movie, I mean, in that scene in particular, that scene, what's done really well in this movie is, in that scene, that was the most realistic death, scenario I've probably ever seen on film. All the way up until like maybe the 80s or 90s, it was always like, you tell my wife I love her. And it's just like, man, don't you quit on me. Don't you quit on me. Don't do that. You're going to live. You're going to tell her herself. You're going to tell her yourself, man. You're going to tell her yourself. No, you tell her I love her. No, you tell her yourself. You're going to make it. And I really hate that. And I don't think that's ever happened in real life. So then they started going the other way, where people are either they're either killed and they just sort of choke on blood and never actually say a word and they die, or they're just straight up shot in the face, like in The Departed, and you don't even, there's not even a close up on their body. They just get shot in the face and then that's it. Both realistic, but it's a little bit too much the other way, because there's no emotional reaction. There's a visceral reaction of like, oh, didn't see that coming, or, oh, God, oh, man, that must be a gut wound because it's just going all the way up his esophagus and he's just puking out blood. There's nothing emotional about that. They struck the best middle ground I've seen on film yet, I believe, that I can recall, where she doesn't even realize at first that she's been shot. She just says something's wrong. Something's wrong. So he's trying to keep her mind off the bullet. I mean, you just got to see the film. But their whole conversation during all that is her essentially saying, I want to go home. And he's like, yeah, we can go home, and him not knowing what to do and not knowing how to help her. And just, it is the performances in that scene are great. And then she just kind of drifts off, and it was so well done. I was very impressed with Jake Gyllenhaal and Rachel McAdams in that scene because, like I said, it was the best death scene I've ever seen, I believe. And then every time everything else happens to him in life, like, you get to this point where he doesn't have a job. He lives in essentially like the worst apartment ever, like just the smallest, barest apartment. And he can't see his wife, or, his wife's dead and he can't see his kid. And then his kid blames him. So what happens after that is he eventually gets a job being like the night janitor at a gym run by Forrest Whitaker, who, was a trainer back in the day. And, So the rest of the film is very predictable. That's the thing. Once he starts his redemption, the film is as predictable as can be. You know, he starts. He learns to be humble. You know, he's eventually trained by the reluctant former trainer who doesn't like him at first, but he sees potential in him and promise, and he trains, you know, with worse equipment and stuff like that. You know, he rebuilds his relationship with his daughter slowly. The judge finally grants him custody of her, and then his former manager comes to him, who now manages the bad guy, basically Miguel Escobar. His manager is played by 50 Cent. I don't know why. You know, says, hey, you know, I can match you two up. Could be a big money opportunity. And so they do the fight, and, you know, you can probably guess how the movie ends. Every criticism I saw on Rotten Tomatoes or anywhere for this film was that this film has a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the assessment was essentially that the performances were very good, but the story was just so predictable and tropish and generic. And I can't disagree with that assessment, because it's true. But for people like me, there's only a couple things in the film that strike me as that would never happen, or that is too much of a alignment of the stars or planets for it to happen. You know, like the circumstances surrounding most major events in the film, like his wife's death and his suspension and the child protection, all that stuff happening. While I agree, like, it was most likely to happen, first of all, without his wife dying, the other two wouldn't have happened. So I agree that, you know, those three events are likely to happen. Look, here's the thing. Like, they could happen, and if anything, it reveals character. Because that's the thing. Like, stupid choices like that are either bad writing or they're meant to display character. They show that he's a hot-headed guy. I mean, like, his main source of strength in fights is his anger and just his raw adrenaline, essentially. So this is a person who's benefited his whole life from not needing to control his rage. But you know, not ever having to check himself. You know, he doesn't work in an office. He's never had to learn social graces. He's never had to learn to, you know, just bite his tongue and not say anything to someone in authority. I mean, he does not behave the right way in court, and it gets him an extra 30 days away from his kid. You know, it's not so the fact that he does all these things that sort of hurt him is believable. So, but the thing is, just the overall impression is that it's sort of flimsy writing. But whether it is or not, it does reveal character, and it does fuel the narrative. So it wasn't a big hang up for me. The best part of this film is the performances. It is Jake Gyllenhaal. It is, that guy carries this film, and it is one of the most committed performances I've seen. He's just, I don't know, he just inhabits this character. He's so good. You know, I mean, last year he was in Nightcrawler, and that was another committed performance where he sort of did a little bit of a physical alteration. You know, he got pretty weird, vascularly thin, and was just really intense and bug-eyed with a good script. And this is sort of the same kind of thing where he's, you know, he gets in shape like every boxing, you know, actor does. But he just kind of, everything about him, the way he walks, just every little subtle physical thing. You know, Jake Gyllenhaal doesn't, you know, gain 100 pounds for this role, and he doesn't have a weird haircut we've never seen him in, but he inhabits a character and a mannerism that we haven't seen him do. And it's just interesting to see. So I fully recommend Southpaw. You can rent it anywhere. I rented it at the library. Yeah, if you didn't catch this in theaters, I certainly suggest you go check it out now. I think you'll overall be glad that you watched it, and hopefully, I think it's better than a 60 on Rotten Tomatoes. I do. I think performances matter for a lot. I think emotion in movies. I'm thinking if there's no big like story hang up in movies, I think that performance should count for a lot. That's why you see movies. You want an escape or an emotional experience or both. I never wanted to escape to this man's life, but the emotional journey it takes you on is satisfying, and the performances are something to behold. It's not. I've said this before, but what's so bad about a predictable plot? It allows you to focus on the performances, but then again, maybe some people don't like knowing essentially what's probably going to happen. Well, what do you think's going to happen to the film? He's going to lose the fight? His daughter, runs out to Las Vegas or something? There's only really one way to end a boxing movie about redemption. You can't have him not win the fight, because then there's no closure, there's no satisfaction, there's no climax. There's just like, oh, good thing you fixed your life, but you suck and you have no future. So sorry. What are they supposed to do? Anyway, a couple interesting things about this movie. This was the last film scored by the composer James Horner before he died in a plane crash in June, I think, of 2015. And at the end of the film, they had a little graphic up that said, "In memory of our friend James Horner." So that was real. I didn't realize that. This movie was originally developed for Eminem as I believe, a loose continuation of the 8 Mile story. Because the title is Southpaw. Jake Gyllenhaal is not left-handed. The finishing blow in the film is a left uppercut, which is the only time in the film you hear the word Southpaw. And so you sort of wonder, well, why name a whole movie about, around that? Because it was originally written for a left-handed actor. Eminem's left-handed. And the whole point that Kurt Sutter was saying was that that a southpaw in boxing is the same as a white rapper is to rap. Like Eminem is. It's unwanted, it's dangerous, and it's unpredictable, and it's unconventional. So having a white rapper playing a left-handed boxer is something, at least Eminem could relate to in terms of being the outsider. And it was all inspired by this album that Eminem had released. And Kurt Sutter was real interested in that chapter of his life. And so, winning back redemption in order, trying to get his life back together for his young daughter. Eminem, raps. He writes a lot about his daughter, always. And so there's an Eminem song or two in the film, and he's like in the ending credits and everything. I think Eminem put the movie on hold to focus more on his music career, and so when they kind of wanted to push the movie along, they were like, okay, we're going to get Jake Gyllenhaal. That's good, because I don't think the film would have been as good without Jake Gyllenhaal, considering he was the best part of it. This film would have faded kind of into, I probably would have still seen it, but it wouldn't have been as satisfying. I think Kurt Sutter is a solid writer in terms of just creating a story, but I think his characters need work. Sons of Anarchy was maybe not the characters. I don't know. I liked Sons of Anarchy just fine, but I kind of wish I hadn't followed the show the whole time, because I didn't really think it ended up being very satisfying. I think Kurt Sutter's strength as a writer is atmosphere, setting, and maybe a couple of key characters. But overall, as a writer, I think he still has got some way to go. But this is his first feature film. Look, this is from me. I'm not a professional writer. I'm just saying this is what I think was wrong with the film. So I'm glad that they got Jake Gyllenhaal. And anyway, well, that's Southpaw. Back to the show, I guess.
Hey everybody, just wanted to talk to you briefly today about 11/22/63. This is a TV miniseries, a Hulu original, and it's based on a Stephen King book, also called 11/22/63. The show stars James Franco as Jake Epping. Jake Epping, in the pilot episode, is able to travel through time back to 1960 through the use of a portal that Chris Cooper owns in his restaurant, his diner. So Chris Cooper gives James Franco's character this mission, which is that he needs to live in the 1960s until John F. Kennedy is assassinated, and basically prevent the assassination of John F. Kennedy by studying Lee Harvey Oswald and all of those involved, or all those who may be involved in the conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy. So over the course of 8 episodes, James Franco just kind of messes with time and messes with the timeline in a lot of really cool ways. And in this version of time travel, time kind of fights back. So, for instance, there's a moment, I believe it's in the pilot episode, where James Franco is back in the past, and he decides he wants to give his father a call. And so he goes to a payphone to make this phone call and hear his father's voice, only to have the line sort of disconnect him. So he tries again, and when he approaches the phone booth the second time, a car smashes through the phone booth. So basically, the past, or rather the timeline, fights back against people who try to meddle with it. So as if there's sort of a pre-approved flow of time, the way things are supposed to happen, and when James Franco or Chris Cooper or whoever else goes back in time to try to fix it, it fights back. Which is a really cool device and opens up some really cool possibilities that are a little trippy and kind of interesting. This miniseries is super entertaining to me, just because of its historical sort of setting and the way that it approaches the subject matter. It doesn't really get bogged down in conspiracy or these ideas that, maybe there was a second shooter, or maybe this or that. Instead, it just sort of presents the facts as we sort of know them to be. And okay, now let's have James Franco try to prevent these things from happening, which I think is a really great way to go about it. Because if you get bogged down in conspiracy theories, there are conspiracy theories out the wazoo about the John F. Kennedy assassination. So if you get bogged down in all of those and try to debunk, 100 of those, you're just going to basically waste everybody's time. So it just kind of goes with the most popular narrative, and I think that's for the best. The miniseries also stars Sarah Gadon as Sadie Dunhill, who is the object of James Franco's affections. Throughout the course of the series, they begin a relationship, and he struggles with the idea of how to tell her, or if to tell her, that he's actually from 2016. So yeah, that's basically a good plot synopsis. Now, for me, I really enjoyed the miniseries. I think it's a little bit, a little draggy in some places, especially towards the middle, and that's not really, a problem for a TV show sometimes, because you can kind of stick with it as long as there's something exciting that happens at the beginning and the end of every episode, and there is. So even though, looking back, the story itself kind of drags in the middle, it doesn't feel that way necessarily, because the episodes all start and end pretty strong. There was never really a point where I thought, maybe I don't want to watch this anymore, or anything like that. It kept my attention. And everybody does a really great job. James Franco is pretty exceptional. Sarah Gadon is awesome. Chris Cooper always is amazing. And the guy who plays Lee Harvey Oswald, his name is Daniel Weber, I think really, really knocks it out of the park and shows a layered portrait of this man that history only really barely knows. There's also a character named Bill, played by George McKay, and he's able to just really kind of tear your heart out in a couple of scenes here and there. So yeah, everybody does really, really well in their roles. It's well written. The direction is great. And I can't really find anything to complain about. I'll say this: make sure you stick around to the end. I mean, once you start it, please finish it, because it really kind of got me at the end. Not that I was sitting, in my office like bawling my eyes out or anything, but just in the fact that it was kind of more emotional than I thought it would be. So I won't say whether James Franco succeeds or what happens. But the last episode's really emotional, and I think most people probably end up with a little lump in their throat, to say the least. I think this was a super achievement of TV miniseries. I'll probably buy it on Blu-ray because I just think it's that good. It is really a testament to what TV can be when it's not on TV. I know on the HooperCast we've talked a lot about Daredevil or Jessica Jones or what have you, but this is really the first online streaming original that has really, really, really floored me. You know what? That's not true. I liked The Man in the High Castle, and for some reason I always forget how much, or not how much I love it, but just that it exists and that it's over, I guess, because maybe it's not over because there's a second season coming. I don't know. I never consider it done, so I never look back on it like, oh, that was phenomenal. Anyway, long story short, this is over. This is 8 episodes and done. Like I said, it's just a TV miniseries, and it's one of the best uses of the digital streaming platforms that I've seen. And it's just a great way to tell a story that is too long to be one single movie, but really too short to be 8 seasons. So, yeah, if you have Hulu and you have a spare moment, check out the pilot. I think you'll enjoy it, and stick around 2 or 3 episodes in. I think you'll really find yourself wanting to binge watch it. So yeah, check out 11/22/63. Again, just a really great achievement of the miniseries sort of medium. And yeah, guys, just keep on hooping. Back to you, Hoop.
All right, thanks, Dustin. Okay, well, that's going to be the episode this week or this time. I know we don't really release these on a weekly basis anymore. So that's going to be the episode. Stay tuned next time whenever we do put out an episode. I'm not sure when that will be because by the time you hear this, I'm probably at the hospital right now. Anyway, I'm going to be preoccupied for a while, taking care of my wife and my family. So, not going to hear from me for a while, at least no more than a pre-rack, if anything. I'll have a lot of downtime in the hospital. Maybe I'll record some reviews on my phone and place them into another pre-rack for you. But until that time, I'll be watching some stuff, and I'll have some reviews ready for you whenever the time comes. I will be going to see Civil War the weekend, this coming weekend. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. See you guys.